Picture this: no walls, no door, no weapons. You're soft-skinned, barefoot, and somewhere in the dark. About 40 meters away, something built to kill is deciding if you're worth the effort. That's not a nightmare. That was Tuesday, for every human being alive 2.5 million years ago. And somehow, every single one of your ancestors survived it. Tonight, we find out how. Let's be brutally honest about where we started. Early Homo species were not apex predators. They were prey. Small, slow, no fire, no language, no coordinated defense. Just another item on the menu for animals that make today's wildlife look tame. We're talking about prehistoric hyenas the size of lions, with jaws engineered to crack elephant bones clean through. Saber-toothed cats carrying 28-centimeter canines. Cave bears that top 12 feet upright. Giant crocodiles that made the Nile version look like a house pet. These weren't exaggerated monsters. These were highly specialized killing machines. And our ancestors shared the same water holes with all of them, every single day. So how did we not vanish in the first 100,000 years? The first answer is almost too simple. They stayed together. Group living is one of the oldest survival tricks in nature, and early humans committed to it completely. Think like a predator for a moment. You spot one lone figure crouched at a riverbank. Easy. Now imagine 25 of them, already screaming, grabbing rocks, moving toward you as a coordinated wall of noise and projectiles. Suddenly, the wildebeest on the next ridge looks a lot more appealing. This is called the dilution effect, and it's mathematically real. The moment you're one of 25, your individual odds of being the unlucky one collapse. You don't need to outrun the predator. You just need to not be chosen. Groups also enabled something even more powerful: active threat escalation. Evidence from chimpanzee behavior strongly suggests our ancestors mobbed predators, not in one-on-one fights, but in organized, chaotic, coordinated swarms of noise and thrown objects. And here's the part most people miss. Apex predators are structurally risk-averse. A lion with a gash in its shoulder may not be able to hunt effectively for weeks. Starvation is a real risk. So when the math tilts, when the target starts fighting back, most large carnivores quietly reevaluate. Natural selection didn't leave room for the groups that scattered. Only the ones that held together made it through. Then came fire. And I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but I want you to understand what fire actually did to the predator problem specifically. Nearly every large land carnivore on Earth carries a hardwired, instinctive fear of fire. Not learned, instinctual. These animals evolved alongside lightning strikes and volcanic events they couldn't predict or control. Fire meant chaos, unpredictability, death, with no way to fight back. So when our ancestors figured out how to keep a fire burning, they didn't just get warmth. They got an invisible wall that almost nothing in nature was willing to cross. Night, the single most lethal period for early humans, when the majority of large predators are most active, suddenly became survivable. Sleep shifted from an open vulnerability to something manageable. Fire also drove off disease-carrying insects. It cooked food, killing the bacteria that would have wiped out thousands. It hardened wooden spear tips. It opened entire climate zones that large carnivores had previously controlled. Before fire, the world happened to us. After fire, we started happening to it. But the cognitive shift was just as significant. At some point, humans developed something no other animal has ever achieved: generative language. The ability to describe things that aren't physically present. The ability to say, "I saw something yesterday near the eastern water. Yellow coat, black markings. Moves like this. If you find tracks shaped like this, go the other direction." Before language, every individual had to personally discover every danger. Knowledge died with the person who learned it. After language, knowledge became cumulative. Warnings transmitted across generations. Threat patterns mapped collectively. A group's understanding of its predators could grow far beyond what any single individual could observe in a lifetime. The predators had speed and strength. We had a knowledge base that never stopped growing. If you find this kind of deep history fascinating, how small biological and behavioral shifts rewrote the fate of our entire species, consider subscribing. We cover this kind of story regularly, and the next one might just change how you see yourself. The spear changed the equation in a different way. The oldest engineered throwing spears found. discovered in Schöningen, Germany, are 400,000 years old, aerodynamically weighted, built from specific selected wood. These weren't improvised sticks. They were precision tools, and what they did to the predator relationship was fundamental. They introduced distance. For the first time, a human could inflict serious, potentially lethal damage on a large predator without entering its strike zone. You could wound it from 30 meters out. You could coordinate with your group so that wherever it turned, another projectile was already incoming. And predators, being intelligent animals capable of learning, began to associate human groups with threat and cost, not easy prey. That associative fear, built across generations, began to slowly reverse the entire relationship. Around 50,000 years ago, something in the archaeological record shifts sharply. Cave paintings appear, not just as art, but as transmitted information about animals, migration routes, and dangers. Bone needles, fish hooks, rope, traps requiring days of advanced planning. Humans weren't just surviving anymore. They were systematically reshaping their environment. They drove predators out of territories using coordinated fire and noise. They hunted apex carnivores deliberately. The evidence from this period includes processed cave lion and cave bear remains, bones showing clear signs of intentional butchery, pelts harvested, remains treated with what looks unmistakably like ritual significance. A statement embedded in the archaeological record: we are no longer the prey here. And there is one final biological trick that deserves more credit than it ever gets. We are terrible sprinters. A lion hits 60 kilometers per hour. A hyena sustains 40. But try asking either of them to run at a moderate pace in 30-degree heat for 4 hours. They can't. They rely on panting to regulate body temperature, which forces them to slow down or stop. We sweat from almost our entire body surface. We can run and thermoregulate at the same time, which is genuinely bizarre by mammalian standards. We are endurance machines. Soft, slow, ugly, relentless endurance machines. And in the right conditions, over the right distance, we could simply outlast almost anything that tried to chase us. Here is the part of this story that should give you pause. The same cognitive advantages that kept us alive, language, coordination, fire, accumulated knowledge, the ability to learn faster than evolution, eventually made us the most destructive force in the history of this planet's megafauna. Woolly mammoth, saber-toothed cat, cave lion, cave bear, dire wolf, giant ground sloth. Within thousands of years of modern humans arriving on each continent, the same pattern emerges. Megafaunal collapse, perfectly correlated with our arrival. They survived ice ages. They survived volcanic winters. They couldn't survive us. Not because we were physically superior, we clearly weren't, but because we were something they had never encountered before. And by the time they understood what that meant, it was already too late to be afraid.